the news just rolls in time and time and time and time again. And sometimes my position group evaluations slip to the back burner and they are now on the front burner because I am stoked to watch the secondary this year. Not because I think they are going to be just as good. I mean, by the end of the season, maybe they'll be better than last year. The amount of talent in the room is crazy. I'm going to be excited watching the secondary this year because I think in 2026, I was talking about returners in the previous segment, if you bring back a strong core of guys who get real meaningful experience this fall, you're going to look at a 2026 Oregon secondary that will be the best that Dan Lanning has ever had and maybe one of the best in the history of Oregon football, which is why I'm excited to watch. There's no guarantees because it's got to play out on the field. You got to take the first step, got to walk before you can crawl. Reverse that, of course. If you get that reference, please let me know so we can be best friends forever and always. Mitchell, that's my brother. You don't need to. I know you know the reference. Anyway, so this is a room that is just stacked with blue chip talent everywhere that you look, and the depth is crazy. We don't know a lot, which is why I'm excited. Like it's the mystery box from Family Guy. Mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. So it could be a boat. It could be 2 tickets to the opera, but it could be a boat. And so I think the number of guys who have, different kind of sizes, skill sets, ability, versatility, I think you've just got so much to work with here. So the room has got Dalen Austin, Kingston Lopa. This is in no particular order. Sione Laulea, who is maybe the most slept on guy in the secondary going into this year. Brandon Finney, Theron Johnson, Jaleel Florence, Ife Obadegwu, Trey McNutt, Dakota Fields, Peyton Woodyard, Naeem Offord, Solomon Davis, Dorian Brew, Aaron Flowers, Jadon Kennedy, Dylan Thieneman. So, my best crack at who starts this fall attempt, I don't really know where the crack. Anyway, my best attempt at who starts in this secondary goes like this. You got 5 guys, of course. Oregon runs a base 4-2-5. We all know that by now. At least I hope. I hope we all know that and have seen that over the last several years. Dylan Thieneman is a surefire starter at safety. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. At the other safety, I'm going with Kingston Lopa. 6'3", 6'4". Man, you go look at what he has put on film this year. He looks fast. He just looks really fast. He looks a lot like Brian Addison. I don't know exactly what went on with Brian Addison, why he transferred to UCLA. Of course he did, and then picked off Dylan Gabriel, took it to the house. I always thought Brian Addison was good on the back end of Oregon's defense. He flew around. He made hits. He got interceptions. He was rangy. He could make plays at all 3 levels. Lopa can be that kind of guy. And, I thought he did a couple of nice things back in the spring game. And, this is a room that entering spring ball, I had a grade of a C, which is average, just because I don't know a whole heck of a lot. I see the potential. I did feel better about it and upgrade him to a C+ coming out of spring. Remember, I'm a tough grader. Tough grader here on the show. Nothing comes easily. Nothing. The amount of talent in the room is immense. The amount of proven production, incredibly limited. But I think Lopa starts at the other safety position alongside Dylan Thieneman. I hope they don't, because, the word on Jadon Kennedy, the transfer from Ole Miss, is he's okay. But he's not bad, but he's not great. He's just kind of there. I would love to see a young guy in that spot more than Kennedy, who's a veteran and might get the start at first, and maybe they work a younger guy into the fold. That's kind of my guess, but I hope he's brought in as a depth piece. I think it'll be him or Theron Johnson starting at a nickel spot. Johnson's played more outside corner, but I think has the body type like Brandon Johnson, who came in last year to play some nickel for the Ducks. But I think your 2 starting outside corners are going to be Ife Obadegwu and Jaleel Florence. The spring buzz on Ife Obadegwu was very real. Others had talked about it that cover the Ducks. I had heard things that the coaching staff really likes him, and so I went into the spring game, and I was watching to see, is he going to make an impact play? Is he going to take guys away? Is he going to get beat? What's he going to look like? First of all, physically, across the board, all of these guys look like they belong. There's no one that looks outmatched, undersized. I will say, of everybody, I thought Peyton Woodyard had the worst spring game of everybody and just looked slow and out of position a couple of times. He might have just had a bad day. But I was getting too many flashbacks to the safeties of the last couple of years that Oregon's had. And that I think Oregon's corners for the last several years have actually been good. The safety play hasn't been up to standard, which is why you've got Thieneman and somebody else. Aaron Flowers, I think, could see the field. I think Lopa is a more intriguing physical prospect. They were both blue chip guys coming out of high school. Flowers was more decorated from, an Under Armour All-American standpoint, but I think Lopa is just such a unique body type. I think he can bring more to the table being rangy on the back end of the defense, but, when Ife Obadegwu forced that fumble that who scooped and scored? It was Blake Purchase. When Blake Purchase, one of the standouts of the spring game, scooped and scored the fumble, and you realize it was Ife that made the play. And then you realize as the game, went on that they just weren't throwing the ball Ife's way at all. I think it was pretty telling. So I think he starts, and I'm putting Jaleel Florence at the other outside corner spot. Last time Jaleel Florence was fully healthy in 2023, towards the end of the season, he was starting for a reason. He has played since he was a true freshman in 2022. That was one of those early Dan Lanning, Lincoln Riley, USC recruiting battles, and Florence has been a good player for the Ducks for the last several years. Now, there are a lot of different combinations that I think you could reasonably predict for a starting five, but Thieneman, Obadegwu, Florence, Lopa, and Kennedy, I think it's as good of an attempt as any, quite frankly. But the guy I mentioned earlier, Sione Laulea, I do not want him to go overlooked. And one thing that excites me about this room is that they're not proven. True. But I don't know that there's a big drop off from first unit to second unit guys. Whereas in years past, that hasn't always been the case. And it's not always the case at any position group. But with this collection of DBs, even with Roderick Pleasant, down at UCLA, because of course that's where all the former Oregon blue chip DBs that hit the portal go. Roderick Pleasant, Jalen Davies, Brian Addison, all went down there. And there have been plenty of other players too. But I just think that the depth in this room is really, really exciting. If Naeem Offord sees the field this year, I think Oregon fans might just go insane in the best way possible, because he's the highest rated defensive back recruit in the history of Oregon football. And does he have a direct path to playing time? No. Is he good enough to get on there? Yes. It would not shock me. He's not going to play safety, according to Tosh Lupoy. He could play nickel, though. Wouldn't shock me if he sees the field as a nickel back at some point this year. And, what I just liked most, I've still got my spring game notes on here. What I liked most about this group, despite the inexperience, which is the only reason that their grade is not higher, is that they just don't have a ton of experience right now, which means guys will make mistakes and will still have areas, despite their potential, where they need to improve. They were making plays. They were in good coverage spots, but there were a lot of plays made against a couple of quarterbacks who we know can really sling the rock. So I'm really excited to watch this group. I was talking about them yesterday on the show, so I thought I'd dive into them today, of course. If you got any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, statements of outrage, you know what to do. Drop the comments below. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.